From the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and John Meoli live on a Tuesday in December, a day away from New Year's Eve. John, what is on your list of changes to make in the new year?
Well,
resolutions, if you will.
Wow. Good morning. Hi.
Good morning.
I'm going to get back to being a healthy person.
I say that every year, and I fail every time.
This was, that this holiday season was impacted by the flu for my little girl.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
A lot of time at our house, basically from like Friday, we host a caroling party. On through, Friday, basically a week in the house, just doing being in the house stuff, and then up at my in-laws this weekend. This was the first holiday season that I really kind of got what grown-ups throughout my life. I'm also a grown-up. I'm 36, but
you are.
Grown-ups throughout my life being like, man, the holidays, all I did was just eat and drink, and I don't really feel good about it.
Yeah.
This was that. This was my first toe dip into that. We've never been home to the extent that we were, and I think, I liked it in the moment, but I don't really like how it feels.
It makes you feel, yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely leaves you feeling a little lethargic.
Yeah.
A little bloated. I totally understand that. I'm just 30 years old, and I've already understood that.
But what are you supposed to do when you're just in your house? And
and it's bad weather. You can't really go outside.
Yeah.
There's a ton of sweets around you. What are you going to do? Not eat them? Come on.
Yeah, no. So, and then you do that thing where you're like, well, I'm just going to eat these so I don't have to eat them later. There's always more once you take that approach. But
I still have Christmas cookies back in my place.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have some, and I'm just not eating them anymore. I'm just done with them.
Good.
They can go. I have some, work related ones, but I'm not going to, get into them. I think I wrote them and deleted them in a column that might be posted on thebanner.com where you can subscribe for $1 for 6 months.
Hell yeah.
But it wasn't really about my lessons learned from 2025. It was more, it was more about the Orioles.
The Baltimore Orioles.
Which I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah. People came
What about
here
you? What do you got?
Pretty much the same thing. Try to be just healthier in general. Try to sleep better. I've been doing that thing at the end of showers where you do 30 seconds of cold water. Have you done that?
No.
It makes you feel, one, you walk out of the shower and you feel warm as opposed to cold. You get out of the shower and you're freezing, and then you towel off, and then you get to a normal temperature.
Yeah.
This changes your body temperature, so at least you walk out feeling warm. But it's supposed to help your immune system. So that's the main reason that I do it. Yeah, and it makes you feel better.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of jolts you awake.
I feel like our first couple months of doing this last winter was me sounding like I do, just constantly being a little sick, and you being a person who gets sick. Who gets more sick than a little sick.
Yes, I get incredibly sick, and that's why I'm doing whatever I can to not be as sick this year.
Can we talk about one more bunk science thing as we're just talking about things that came across our algorithm and seemed like a good idea
that probably don't work, but sure.
Yeah. I got myself an acupressure mat.
What the hell is that?
So it's basically a smaller size yoga mat, and it's got these little plastic
pinpricks.
They're
needle pricks.
Think of a spiky Play-Doh mold. Okay. It's got a bunch of those with sharper points than you'd have for a Play-Doh set. And you just lay on it for 20 minutes, and it hurts for a minute or two, and then it starts to feel really like nice and relaxing.
Interesting. Have you ever done acupuncture?
No,
I never have either.
No, I don't.
It freaks me out.
I don't spend money on self-care. I just, or taking care of myself whatsoever.
Well, did you get this as a gift, or you bought it?
I got it for myself. I was influenced by my algorithm, and it was $30, and I had a $25 Amazon gift card. So really, it was $6.
Yeah.
And there are nicer ones, and I probably need a nicer one, but I really like it. It's very relaxing. You just kind of zone out, and it might just be 40% these weird plastic pieces of junk in your back, and 60% that you're just laying on the ground for 20 minutes and not looking at your phone, not doing anything. It's it's really relaxing.
I think half of that stuff is just placebo anyway, but if it works, it works.
Yeah.
That Jonah Schaefer on the Banner Ravens podcast. If you like the Ravens, by the way, we have a Ravens podcast too called the Banner Ravens podcast, and my co-host is Jonah Schaefer, and we went to a biohacking gym and did an immortal chamber, immortal with an A. The video is on our site. It's on all our social channels. We only got 15 minutes, so I can't really say, but if it works or not. But I mean, it's like a red light and it's relaxing music, and they blow air on you. Does it work? Who's to say? Does it make you feel relaxed? Sure. Is it worth $160,000? Yes, that's how much it cost. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, if you have $160,000 to spend on that, then it is probably worth it to you.
Yeah.
But I think that's like a very small subset of people out there. And if it's if it's even 0.0001% of this listenership, get in touch with us.
Yeah,
we'd love to know. We'd love to hear from you.
Donate to the Baltimore Banner.
We'd love to hear from you.
All right, let's talk about the Baltimore Orioles because I'm sure 6 minutes in, a lot of people are already tuning out. We're going to talk about the Orioles bringing back an old friend, re-signing right-handed pitcher Zach Eflin to a one-year deal, according to our own Andy Kuska, that is worth $10 million with a mutual option for 2027. A lot of the times those mutual options don't end up getting picked up by both sides, but sometimes there's a buyout attached, and that's a nice little send-off for a player. Let's talk about how he came to be a Baltimore Oriole back at the trade deadline in 2024. You may recall that the Orioles, when they were going for it in 2024, traded Jackson Baumeister, Matthew Etzel, and Mac Horvath for a year and a half of team control of Zach Eflin from the Tampa Bay Rays. If you're wondering where those three prospects are right now, none of them has reached the big league so far. Of the three, Baumeister is currently the only member of the Rays top 30 right now, and he had a 4.6 ERA in AA last year. That Rays top 30, which is now populated by former Orioles prospects after the Shane Paz trade last week.
Yeah, there was like, you communicated with me on the day of that trade. And like the one thing I could communicate as I was like processing in my mind, like we're getting ready to have a bunch of people at our house, like my family's coming. It's, and the one thing I was able to communicate out loud to my darling wife was like, I'm gonna have to write 4 new scouting reports. Turns out I didn't, but that was the only thing I thought about. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this again.
Yeah. Sorry, you all 4 guys you just came up with in the Baseball America top 30, and then you just gotta send them right back out.
It's actually great though because you do that list and you're like, oh, I wish I can get this guy on, and then you tell yourself, a bunch of these guys get traded, like he will get on, and it never actually happens, but now it did. So shout out to Mike Elias and the Rays. In
the doldrums of the Orioles rebuild, when I was over at Masson and I had the Masson All Access podcast with Brennan Mortensen, which is now the Bird's Nest, this is how like bad things were at the big league side and how little content we had. We did the not top 30 where I don't know if we came up with 30, but we came up with all these prospects that missed the top 30 in MLB's top 30. And that just goes to show you just how Caden Grenier was part of that. It was just, we were really scraping the bottom of the barrel to try to find some prospects to talk about.
I can't even imagine doing that.
Yeah. Well,
that's a choice. That's a choice, man.
Yeah. We had some tough times. We also came up with a list of all the guys that they should, during the lockout, all the guys that they should draft in the Rule 5 draft, and then they cancel the Rule 5 draft.
Yep. That's how that goes.
Yep. All right. Let's talk more about Zach Eflin as we keep going off on these tangents. You may recall Zach Eflin made 9 terrific starts for the team in the regular season 2024. He looked awesome. He made 1 pretty good postseason start as well as the Orioles were swept out of the playoffs. 2025, you come into the year, you're thinking Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez. No, this team didn't get an ace, but you have those 2 guys to anchor at the top of the rotation. Grayson Rodriguez obviously goes down in spring training. Zach Eflin makes 3 good starts to start the season and then suffers from a lat injury. Goes on the IL. That was the first of 3 IL stints for Zach Eflin in 2025. Eventually was shut down for the year right before the trade deadline, the day of the trade deadline, in fact, and finished the year with a 5.93 ERA in just 71 1/3 innings. He had lumbar microdiscectomy, however you want to say that, in August. He said the other day that he's basically been pitching through back pain for about 10 years now. In terms of the timeline for recovery for a microdiscectomy, our own Andy Kuska cites the National Library of Medicine when reporting that the timeline is typically about 8 months. So we are about 8 months. April would be about 8 months away from August. Zach Eflin said his goal is to be ready for opening day, but he said that could change depending on anything. It's pretty serious back surgery when something like that happens. But Zach Eflin, talking to the media the other day, was pretty open and honest about how difficult it was for him mentally to recover from that and how he couldn't do basic things. He has, 4 little kids, I think? He couldn't pick them up. He couldn't play with them. He was dealing with this pain when he was pitching, and he was in a dark spot. And he gets the surgery. He has to miss half the season. He's in the midst of his worst season, perhaps as a pro, statistics-wise. But he feels a lot better now. He feels like he can do a lot more things. He feels like he can focus more on his mechanics this year as opposed to previous years when he might have been pitching through pain. So this is a perhaps different, better Zach Eflin that the Orioles will see in 2026 as opposed to the one that they saw in 2025.
Yeah, and as I said, no one cares about the lessons I learned from 2025. What I was going to take away, my resolutions. I have two that apply to this specific thing right here. One of them is that like just because I understand something doesn't mean that that understanding makes it automatically right or good. Mm-hmm. So like this makes complete sense for the Orioles to do. Let's establish that right away. They have a rotation, with Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells, who are healthy and are, full go to the extent they can be, but it would be irresponsible to have them combined for like 380 innings this year.
They can't do that.
They're not going to do that. So you need to cover whatever the gap is somehow. Zach Eflin is a really smart way to do that. You don't really have to onboard him. He is in the mix. If he ends up needing longer to rehab, it's not going to be like a strain on his life because he lives in, I believe, Florida. the Tampa area and can just be home and can go to Sarasota and do that. Like it makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I said it on our podcast or just my life. It feels like a very neat fit. So I think that is it. And I think it kind of speaks to the Orioles' understanding of what they need to do and kind of put those puzzle pieces together. And this is a higher quality puzzle piece than we've talked about. But also, one of the things that I've kind of resolved not to do is to just take a guy for what he is when he's healthy and just write off when he's not. I think that's something that I've always done. And I thought about that as you were talking, because when Zach Eflin is healthy, he is a really good pitcher. There's pretty much 0 points in his career when he has been healthy and pitched poorly. I say that with having very little understanding of what happened like before he got to the Rays. I know he actually reached free agency, but
no, his first 2 years in the big leagues when he was 21 and 22, when he was a starter for the Phillies, he had an ERA of between 5 and 6. Since then, it has been consistently an ERA at 4.36 or below.
Yeah.
So the awful 14 start season that he had in 2025 was his worst since he was 23 years old.
Yeah, and there's not, there are seasons in there where it's not a ton of pitching. 2020 nobody pitched a lot. Obviously, 18 starts in 2021, 20 games in 2022, and then the Rays sign him and he's healthy, and then the Orioles trade for him and he's healthy until he's not. And I think it's really important to point out that he is really, really good when he is healthy. I mean, I think he was truly like undervalued and underrated until the moment he started just giving up like 5 home runs and outing, and then the balance kind of came back into alignment a little bit. But we sat in this room and we're like, Charlie Morton, like, sure, he's always been good. And we've said that about Kyle Gibson in the past. And I think Zach Eflin is better than them, but I think that you're going into this knowing that you're getting the best of him if he's healthy. And that there's an if there. There's just, this is not as safe of insurance policy as say Ramon Laureano was as Tyler O'Neill insurance.
Right. And we can't forget that, like you mentioned, Zach Eflin has missed a lot of time with other injuries. It's not just the back. He has missed time with that back injury for a while, but he all time previously in his career with knee issues. He's 32 years old, so not ridiculously old, but anytime you have shoulder issues and back issues with a pitcher, that's certainly a cause for concern. So there's definitely no guarantee that he's going to be healthy and making, 20, 25 starts for this team in 2026. But I think the Orioles are okay with that. When this signing came across my timeline, my first thought was, all right, 1 year, $10 million. The Orioles, this feels like a throwback to previous off seasons. I thought we were past the 1 year, $10 million deal that the Orioles love to hand out to everybody. I mean, Kyle Gibson back in the day, the first time that the Orioles signed Kyle Gibson before the 2023 season, that was 1 year, $10 million. Tomoyuki Sugano signed 1 year, $13 million. Charlie Morton signed 1 year, $15 million. Those three signings, sure, they got similar deals, but the difference for me between those three and this one is that those three felt like higher floor, lower ceiling. You were never going to get an incredible all-star Cy Young season from Charlie Morton or Tomoyuki Sugano or Kyle Gibson at their stages in their respective careers. For Zach Eflin, you were getting perhaps a lower floor. There's a chance that maybe he doesn't pitch as much this year. Maybe he doesn't come back until the second half. Maybe something goes wrong with his rehab. Maybe he needs an extra surgery, whatever it is. I'm not speaking from any knowledge base, but look at his career injury history and you could get a little concerned about how much he's actually going to pitch. But when he does pitch, I think he has a higher ceiling than Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugano, Kyle Gibson. There is a chance that when he comes back, he could resemble the form of that we saw him at the second half of 2024. So this is a little bit of a bigger swing, but it is still a risk. And the Orioles this offseason have opted for safer bets. Large reason that they traded Grayson Rodriguez for Taylor Ward is they didn't know what they were going to get out of Grayson Rodriguez, but they knew what they were going to get out of Taylor Ward. You know, Shane Baz has had injury history, a long injury history as well, but he made 31 starts last year. They feel like they can plug him pretty safely in there. Pete Alonso has been one of the healthiest players in Major League Baseball his entire career since 2019.
Yeah.
He's been out there for 95% of his team's games. So the Orioles this offseason have opted for bigger swings and safer bets. This doesn't feel like that, but at the same time, I understand why they would still be able to explain this one to themselves.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple factors that go into this. One is looking at what they have, and they, I think, you know, earlier in the offseason, I wrote that, like, before we talk about Framber Valdez or going out and doing this and making trades, like, the Orioles need to have an honest assessment of what they have and what they can count on and put a number to it.
Yeah.
Put a number to it. There's pie in the sky. Yes, Kyle Bradish believes that he can make 30-some starts this year. Not all of them like 7 innings a pop, but he believes that he can do that. You know, I'm sure Tyler Wells feels similarly. I'm sure Trevor Rogers feels similarly. I'm sure Dean Kramer feels similarly. I'm sure Zach Eflin, truthfully, based on what he said yesterday, feels similar. All these guys think that. But if you're truly realistic about if there are 162 games in a season and you want your starter to give you at least 6 innings, like quality innings, every time out, I'm going to do math in my head. It's not going to go well. But we're talking about, I actually have no idea, like 700 some innings, 800 innings
for the entire pitching staff,
for the rotation, for the starters. So bring up the calculator.
I'll figure it out.
Just not if I was close. You need to be able to do that, and you don't know when you're going to need what. You know, mixed into this, they brought back Albert Suarez, who was this kind of safety net in the past. You have Tyler Wells, who basically would be the odd man out right now. There are options, but they need to. I think this is just adding, like, I bet the Orioles are banking on 10 good starts from Zach Eflin this year. That is like I'm not reporting that. I'm just saying, like, if we think about a baseline, like, if this guy gives us like 60, 70 really good innings out of our rotation, no matter when that is, it's going to help us, and we're going to win 7 of those games.
Yeah.
And that'll be good, because 7-3 is better than 5-5. It's better than 4-6. But it's interesting that they're doing this now, because kind of in the same vein as the Shane Baz trade, there's still a lot of stuff that can happen. And with, you know, I think we're getting close to, like, MI's posting window closing. I think it feels like that is slowing the starting pitching market down a bit.
That ends Friday, by the way.
Yeah. So it feels really interesting that they're kind of doing this stuff before all that stuff happens. And the alternative is set your sights on 1, 2, 3 pitchers, and you don't get them. And then you're looking at the Charlie Mortons of the world and the Tomoyuki Suganos, and you're not ending up with a better team than you sought out to have. And so you do all this, and I don't think it prevents all that stuff. But I think if we're talking about lessons learned and, you know, resolutions, the Orioles are not going to get, like, caught empty-handed. And I think this is a way to keep their hands a little more full.
Yeah, I think so long as he is healthy, the Orioles will use Zach Eflin this year. Even if they add to their rotation, we'll talk about why this probably isn't the last move, and it shouldn't be the last move. But if the Orioles last year finished 19th in innings pitched by starting pitchers, I looked it up, with 829 and 2/3 innings by their starting pitchers. If Zach Eflin pitches 70 of those, like around the number that he did last year, I'd rather have Zach Eflin pitching those 70 some innings than, I'm sorry, but Cade Povich.
Yeah.
Or somebody who is getting called up from AAA who is not quite ready. I think maybe Chase McDermott, perhaps that is out the door. Maybe somebody else who is closer to the big leagues. Zach Eflin, if he takes a chunk of that, the Orioles, as we've seen, there will be pitching injuries. They will need to break glass in case of emergency because there will be emergencies. And so they will need as much depth as they can get. And so they should still be looking for good pitchers. I mean, I wrote last season, and I think this was prescient. You said, what the last year has shown is that the margins are too fine for this team to traffic in anything other than the highest caliber arms available. And I still agree with that. And I think when Zach Eflin's arm is healthy and his back is healthy, he is one of the higher caliber arms out there in free agency. If he were a healthy free agent, if he had just pitched a full season like he had in 2024, he would be up in the upper echelon, maybe not quite where the Framber Valdez or Ranger Suarez is, but he would be a high-priced free agent.
Oh, 100%.
In free agency. I mean, he could be getting $100 million if he had come off a healthy and good season like he did in 2024.
Yeah, I think that's completely reasonable. I'm looking at the deals that are on. Yeah, it really feels like that's true. And we're talking about somebody who has proven that they could do it in the playoffs, who's proven that he can do it in this division. Like, I bet, I know he said that there were other, the Orioles have been talking to him for a while. I'm sure there were other teams that were interested and probably didn't have the level of familiarity and understanding of what was going on with his surgery and stuff. But he seems like a person that if he didn't end up back here, he would have been somewhere in this division.
Sure.
And that's, I don't want to say the Orioles are protecting against that, but it feels like something where, somebody who in a different world could have received a qualifying offer, in a different world could have, gotten a lot more, in a different world could be pitching against you in September.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that it's better to have Zach Eflin than not for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. He could have gone back to the Rays. I mean,
back to the Rays. I mean, Boston's been looking for, I feel like the injury risk part of it almost makes him like too much of a fit for Boston because they just signed pitchers who are like, well, maybe this guy's going to throw 180 innings or maybe he's going to throw 18. Like, I don't know. But it's like the Price is Right game with like the 0 up or down.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Lucas Giolito and like Walker Buehler.
Yeah.
That and this is like pretty much the same deal that Walker Buehler got a little bit more money.
Like 20, I think. But I don't know about and I think there's incentives in this too that like if that can like escalate for Zach Eflin, and it feels like a good deal for all involved.
And I've heard people say before, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. I'd posit Craig Kimbrell as an example, but sorry, Craig Kimbrell getting his honorary mention every single podcast.
Who's the other guy? Tony Kemp.
Tony Kemp gets the
Tony Kemp, Jorge Mateo.
Technically,
Happy New Year to all.
Happy New Year to all. Those are things we will leave in the past in 2025.
I can't promise that.
I agree with that to an extent. Like 1-year deals are obviously very low risk, but what the Orioles did last offseason was rely on all 1-year deals. You can't rely on 1-year deals. They're nice to have as ancillary pieces. And hey, if this guy works out, he works out. Like Ramon Laureano, 1.5-year deal technically because there was a team option. But, they relied on the aforementioned Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugano, Kyle Gibson. Those would be fine if they were your 6, 7, 8, 9 starter, if they were your break glass in case of emergency guys. But the problem was 2 of those guys, and it ended up being a 3, were in your rotation for way too long.
Yeah.
So this is fine. A 1-year, $10 million deal for Zach Eflin is perfectly fine. It's worth the risk. It's a low stakes gamble. It's fine. It just can't be something that you rely upon because you look at the rotation right now and it's Kyle Bradish, Trevor Rogers, Shane Baz, Zach Eflin, Dean Kramer. You've improved the rotation. It's still not among the league's best. It's maybe a top half of baseball rotation, but you still need more. And I think that this team still is going to look for more. John, you mentioned Tatsuya Imai. His posting window ends on Friday. That is a big domino to fall. And then obviously you have the two lefties, and Framber Valdez and Ranger Suarez, who are probably the top two arms available in the free agent market. To me, given everything that we've heard and seen from this front office this winter, I don't think that the Orioles are done adding to their rotation. And if an addition bumps Zach Eflin to the 6th spot in this rotation, to the 5th spot, it bumps Dean Kramer out, whatever it is, fine, because you've improved your rotation.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how they're going about this. I think there's a good foundation for what they're trying to build, and the idea that they would be done feels, again, this isn't the same as like looking at the outfield and be like, what the hell's going on? Like, this lineup is not going to make sense. Like, this is not good enough. And then they go do something else with Pete Alonso. This isn't that. But I think there's a knowledge, and let's be real, someone who you just rattled off there is not going to be available for opening day. That's just how these things go.
Yeah, the 5 guys that are mentioned.
Yeah, so that it will feel a lot better, even though Tyler Wells is there, and you hope that Albert Suarez can physically recover and be closer to what he was in 2024 than 2025.
Yeah, back on a minor league deal.
Yeah, back on a minor league deal. Those are all well and good, but it's a lot easier to slide somebody in who's proven, and when somebody goes down, there's not going to be, I think, thinking back to last spring, like once Grayson Rodriguez started having his weird stuff going on, like that was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a small deal if that happens to somebody who slotted in for the top of the rotation this year, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be looking around like, oh boy, there's nobody who can do what he does here. That will not be true. So I think in that sense, the pursuit of adding more makes a good bit of sense. And I think the Orioles are probably feeling good about their potential to still do that without feeling like there is too much pressure to do something they really don't want to do just because they have to do something. They've already done plenty of some things, and that was the case last year too. They did a lot of some things and they weren't like good some things.
They were more nothings than something.
They turned out to be some things that didn't pan out, but I don't think that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. I would still try to do something. Doesn't have to be huge, but something big.
Yeah.
This also, I said this last year and turned out to not be correct, but I'm going to say it again. This move, I said this when the Orioles signed Charlie Morton, because I was looking at the rotation saying, all right, this makes it a little bit easier. If you wanted to make another trade, this makes it a little bit easier to do so, because you add Zach Eflin to this group and maybe he's taking up innings that you might have had to give to one of your arms in AAA. Like, Cade Povich is in the big league, so not in AAA, but Trey Gibson in AAA, Nestor Herman in AAA, both those guys pretty close to the big leagues. Both those guys could very well be called upon this season. But if you have Zach Eflin taking up those innings and some other team is calling and you're trying to extract a starting pitcher for them, maybe it's a little bit easier to trade Trey Gibson or Nestor Herman because you now have Zach Eflin as some insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is part of this too. And I think in the same way that, they basically signed Pete Alonso over the top of Kobe Mayo. Like, I don't think that means any less about Kobe Mayo. I think it just means they don't want to go into the season being like, well, this is how first base is going to go. And there's a wide variance of outcomes. I think that the delivering quality major league starting pitching to the big leagues for this pitching program is like the final step. It's like the 400 level class that they're taking right now. And then they'll be like, all of a sudden, like, boom, this whole thing has arrived, but you can't count on it. You can, like, these players who have been delivered to the big leagues so far have proven themselves capable of being spot starters sometimes. I think Cade Povich has made more starts in the big leagues than probably realistically he should have at this point. And that's not to say like, and I think there needs to be, I think they would probably be the first to say that you would hope that things will have improved a little bit. Brandon Young, over 94 fastball, good. Under 94 fastball, not good. Like, that's not something. That's not something you're going to try to count on. And like Zach Eflin is something you feel good if you have to use. And I think that's the difference. You can have all these guys and they can be good, but you need to have a little firmer feel for what you're going to be getting.
Exactly.
And I would point out, there's Fangraphs one projection system out basically at this point. Again, doing math in my head and not doing the best job. So I'm just going to say some numbers in a row. All right, ready?
Same. Yeah.
3, 2, 2, 3.1. So that's 10.1 projected WAR from like the 5 starters that we've mentioned.
Okay.
Which is
Bradish, Rogers, Boz, Efflin, Kramer.
Yeah. 10-ish.
Okay.
2024 rotation had 13.2 wins above replacement. 2023, 11.1. Those are the highest for this organization since like 2010. So like we're talking about those caliber of things.
Yeah.
I venture to say that last year the projections were not that high. And I venture to say too that some of those are probably low.
Yeah.
Some of those are probably low, given what Kyle Bradish and Trevor Rogers have proven capable of, given what Shane Boz can do.
Conservative.
They seem a little conservative is exactly what I would say too. So in this one projection system and, Efflin and Kramer and like 1.5 and 1.3 like feel fine, but it feels like this is a firm base for to be operating off at this point.
I will say though, last year I said when they signed Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugano, all those guys, I said the Orioles still need somebody for the top end of the rotation. If they don't get that guy by opening day, I will be critical. I probably wasn't as critical because I got lulled into a sense of, okay, this team knows what it's doing. They have an idea. The offense will be able to carry them. And everything fell apart. I'll say it again on December 30th. If this team does not add somebody else meaningful to this rotation, I will be very critical of this roster construction, this front office by the time we get to opening day.
Yeah.
And I hope you hold me to that, but I hope we don't get to that because I hope that the Orioles will, realize what they need to realize, which is they need to add here.
I think they do. Like we're talking about, it would be, they're already so far down the road, there's no, I don't think they're going to sit here given all they've done and be like, well, we could finish the job here.
Fine.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think there's any room to leave that to chance at this point.
Yeah. All right. It's step on the column time.
Yeah.
John, you of course write your wonderful newsletter / column Inside the Dugout. Do you call it more newsletter or column? It hits
now it's
inboxes.
just back to being a column that is delivered as a newsletter, I believe.
Okay.
Which is, cool. Sometimes the worst things are when I like forget to open it. It's like, I'm just like,
you don't give yourself an open?
I got to give myself an open. I got to scroll all the way down.
Help the open rates. It's Inside the Dugout. And John, you were writing this week about what a weird dynamic the Orioles had in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, this feels the end of 2025 feels like really good and interesting. And like it's differentiated from anything that's happened before. And it's been, I don't want to say exciting, but like it's probably been exciting for fans. It's probably been really exciting to have the Orioles doing what they've been doing. And that comes on the heels of like a miserable, terrible season.
Yep.
That went bad in pretty much every way it could possibly go bad. That destroyed faith in everything that has been built here. That has brought down like expectations for players upon whom this was built. That cost a lot of people their jobs.
Yeah.
There's really nothing, and I think it's an important dynamic, It was pretty clear when they were tanking, like actively like being bad so they could get draft picks that like I think there was a world where you could say this will be worth it. I don't think 2025 was worth it for the way that it ended.
No.
But I think 2025 in a way that no one could have thought, it's like almost sad that I know it's only like a calendar and a day and like whatever. They will still be one of the more aggressive teams this offseason into 2026 because why would they stop? Just because the calendar changes. But I don't want to say it's like sad to see this year end, but like the way it's ending makes it seem like this year went a lot different than it did.
Interesting.
Do you think that, like, I guess the question is like, how will you remember 2025? Like, I know the 2025 season will be remembered poorly. It was a complete disaster, but like what we have right now, the freshest thing in anyone's memory is like a lot of really interesting and like fun stuff. Like how will how will you remember it for anything other than the fact that it was terrible?
I think how 2026 goes will help me remember how 2025 went. Because if this team comes out in 2026 and responds the way that they should and gets back to the playoffs, maybe makes a deep playoff run, Pete Alonso works out, the young core looks a lot better. They look closer to their old selves than they did in 2025. I think we will say, all right, maybe that was a necessary hiccup. Maybe that was the Orioles having to take their own medicine and understand that it was the front office had to learn the lesson that you can't just get by with all these homegrown players, that it was the players themselves who had to understand, hey, I need to make changes here and there. We need to do things a little bit differently than we've done in the past. But if they don't respond in 2026, if they come out the gates and they struggle, if they miss the playoffs for another straight year, if they win 75 more games, then you'd say, all right, this was maybe the start of a downward trend. And 2025 was, unfortunately, the year that derailed the Orioles train from the tracks.
Yeah. And I almost view in the same sense, that's kind of how like you could look at that's a good way of putting it, because that's how you could look at 2024. If you wanted to look at like how that team went, you could say like how that season went. You could say they had like a top 5 offense in the league and spent half the year as like the best team in baseball. Or you could say all these cracks started to show.
Right.
And you just didn't look at them.
Yeah.
There were 2 avenues to take. I don't think there was a lot of like middle, like fence sitting, like, oh, I don't know, maybe this team will go 81-81. Like, I'm sure they were out there and like, congratulations to you. You were also way higher on your projection of this team than anyone else. But that kind of clarity that a year later, like it was very clear that there were cracks, that something was going on that wasn't good. And those cracks turned into like breaks and things kind of crumbled. I think it'll also be if this team comes back and they're just back to normal, like it'll make the 2025 feel dumb in retrospect, because it was a complete waste of the talent and the time of everyone involved to just let the season get to that point and have everything that happened and be unable to correct it, whether that's before the season even started, in the course of the season. Like it would make everything feel really dumb if it's just like, well, everything's fine. But that's where I kind of struggle. It's like, there's no, when you say like a necessary thing that needed to happen, and like these evolutions, I think it's more that they were just catalysts to allow them to happen, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe if the Orioles had the exact same season in 2025 as they did 2024 record wise, like some stretches where they're really good, some stretches where you're like, what is this team? Like all the questions exist. Maybe that's because they do need a new manager. And maybe that's because they do need like an influx of like proven talent to supplement these young guys who have done a lot on their own and are either plateaued or regressing, or just finding being a player in your mid to early 20s in the big leagues really, really hard. All those things could have been true whether the Orioles won 75 games, 85 games, 95 games this year. The thing is that you wouldn't have had the urgency to do them if they didn't have the season that they had.
Yes.
If they plug along and are fine, it's really hard to look at a world where Brandon Hyde is not the manager of this team again.
Yeah.
Instead, you have somebody in Craig Albernez who, you know, comparison is like a hard thing to do. We've never seen him manage a game. We've interacted with him like a handful of times, but like he seems like he is what this team needs right now, which is different than a continuation of the manager that this team needed 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Those are different things. And like, maybe if they're modestly disappointed with how the season, like the offseason, like the playoffs went, or if they're looking at another team from the division going to the World Series and be like, we had a good year, but we got to be, maybe they do go sign Pete Alonso anyways. And maybe the room is in the budget and this is the plan all along. I'm not giving anyone that kind of credit, but for all the things that have happened since the season ended to have happened would not have been possible if they didn't completely blow chunks on the 2025 season, just puke all over their shirts.
Sometimes you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. The problem is their momentum right now, after this, the way that the season ended, they were falling backwards. I mean, you know, you obviously had some improvements by the end of the year, but that roster was very depleted because of trades, because of injuries, whatever it was. So you need a catalyst to push you forward. And the catalyst, hopefully, is this offseason. It is the new additions that you're getting. It is Pete Alonso. It is Shane Baz. It is whoever else could be added to the rotation to push you back forward. And I want to read out a quote that our own Andy Kuska relayed to us at the very end of the year from Jordan Westburg, because not only is Jordan Westburg one of the young, exciting, talented pieces on this team, but he thinks about this stuff and talks about this stuff in a very insightful way.
Yeah.
And I hate to read a big block quote. I'm going to try to skip over some portions, but the whole thing is really awesome and kind of shows where his mindset is at. And I think where this team's mindset is at. He said, quote, talking to the fans, he said, quote, "In a way, you're going to have to stick with us. I know people don't like to hear that, but like everybody's still learning. Everybody's still figuring themselves out and our bodies and the game. And I think in a way, that's the beauty of baseball." Went on to say there should be this level of camaraderie that is developed and earned and respected, and we should all show up in spring training excited. And the fans, I think, should be excited. Sure, there's going to be expectations we have to live up to, but we certainly didn't do that this year, but we accept that. I'm not going to sit here and say the fans were wrong for expecting more than what they should. No, they were right. If you looked at us over the past 2 years, we expected to play better, but we didn't. So ultimately, it's going to come down to playing better next year, and how that happens is still going to be seen. And I'm sure the guys in here are mature enough to reflect and to work and to come back hungry, excited, motivated, whatever you want to call it, whatever gets them ticking. But it'll be a fun time, end quote.
Fun time.
Fun time. This team needs to get back to having fun. But having fun, but with the added maturity of what this past year has taught them. And I don't want this team to show up in spring training and be all business and be not doing anything fun. They decide they're not living together. They decide that they're
not in barracks.
They live in barracks, army barracks, and wake up at the crack of dawn and do push-ups. Like they still need to have some fun, but they also are older. They're mature. They have learned lessons of, hey, not everything's going to go your way in baseball, and sometimes pitchers will adjust to you, and you have to adjust back. So it's striking a delicate balance, but I love this from Jordan Westburg because it shows that he cares about this about getting this back on track as much as the fans.
Yeah. And
to me, that's what fans want to hear. I think so many fans are frustrated because they see the way that things have gone and think these guys aren't as good as we thought they were. And we're going to lose Gunnar in a few years anyway. We're going to lose Adley. Adley took a step back, and this whole core is not going to amount to what we thought it was.
Yeah.
And this is Jordan Westburg saying, we are as dedicated to fixing this as you are dedicated to watching us fix this. And we will do what we can here. And we still want to have fun. We still want to enjoy ourselves, but we're going to get this right. And that is what this team needs.
Yeah. And I think I've said this before. There was a point probably in the third quarter of the season. Things were basically done, but they were still playing a lot of games. And I was talking to one of the players in this, homegrown group in the dugout, and we were talking about everything that happened and everything that was going to happen probably in the winter. And he was like, look, this has been a ridiculous year. And we know it's been bad. And I've been bad. And he's like, we could just show up next year and win 100 games. And that is not, you can't just show up and win 100 games.
Exactly.
You have to, and I'm not saying that to discount what this person said, but
they have the talent to do it.
Yes, there is. It's not, you're not living in fantasy land to think that there is the ability for this team to go and be what it has been very recently, for these players to have been what they have been very recently. And I thought that was really instructive. He didn't say it into a recorder like Jordan Westburg did, but I thought it was really instructive and kind of I took it, I felt it meant a lot to that was what they were thinking, because these guys clearly talk to each other about this stuff. When we were at winter meetings, and Craig Albernas said he was surprised at how many of them gave him the same message. I don't think these guys sat around and were like, all right, new manager, we're going to get a new manager. Maybe, we love Manso, but if we get a new manager, here's what we should tell him.
You're right.
I don't think they did that, but I think they all
talk to each other
a lot, and they think and feel the same things. They experience the same things. They have been here to see it for a long time. And for them to all tell him we didn't play, we forgot how to play winning baseball, is it's pretty damning. And
Yeah.
it's also pretty interesting that they think that is as important as they do, because they all need to, everybody's OPS could stand to be like 150 points higher than it was last year. And that would be the level that they should be at.
Right.
That's very hard to do, but it's really, really, really hard to win, as we saw as they were like falling apart in April and May. It's really, 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 really hard to win baseball games when you're underperforming offensively and you can't catch the ball and you can't throw it to the right base, and like you're doing all this dumb stuff that you shouldn't be doing. Like they need to help themselves out. I think they know that, and I think the way that this new coaching staff is going to help them out, and the way they're going to help themselves out just by having gone home and done something that wasn't lose baseball games in an Orioles uniform for the last couple of months, it's all going to help. But I think that Jordan Westbrook quote is kind of prescient, because I think he knows and they know that like they're not the toast of the town anymore, but like they can be.
Yeah,
they can be very quickly. If this team gets back to doing the things that people liked them for doing, they will be. The first time that they throw a Gatorade cooler on top of Pete Alonso's head and like rip his jersey off because they walked the game off, people are going to feel the way they felt about the 2023 Orioles. Right. And they're going to see all the guys that were part of those teams doing this stuff. And it's going to be that again. But I don't think there's any expectation from the players, from the fans, that's not going to be earned.
And I think you saw some signs of it at the end of last year from, honestly, the guys that got called up. I mean, you saw Samuel Basayo walk off, you saw Dylan Beavers walk off, and you saw just this joy of those guys going out there with no expectations, with just the joy of being able to play Major League Baseball. And it was something that we saw in the early years of 2022 and 2023 and first half of 2024. And you just want to see a little bit of that again from this team.
Yeah. And it's hard to be a big league baseball player. And like the amount of fun you can have is pretty much directly correlated to how much you win. But the inverse of that is even more stark. If you are not like, if you're having fun and you're 10 games under 500 and your OPS starts with a 6, then you're not
doing this right.
No, then everybody's like, what the hell are you doing? What's this person doing? This is the big leagues, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that happened here, but you can't be what this team wants to be and not play well too. And I think, when I spoke to Austin Wins, a former Oriole who worked with Craig Albarnaz in San Francisco and had some of the coaches who are here now working with them, and he made it a point to say that like they were always like, we were working, but like it didn't feel like work.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Peloton instructors, Callie Gullickson, one of her mottos is, we take the work seriously, but not ourselves. And I think that's a really good thing to.
Sure.
I think that's a really good way to go about this.
Share that with Albie. I think he'll like that.
I think he might too. But I think that's really important to kind of. I think that's an important distinction to make, is that I think the Orioles probably went a little bit in the wrong direction on both of those things. And that's kind of where you just get that alignment right, and this will all make a lot more sense.
Exactly. We're a month and a half away. So much can happen. I'm just excited to see, and I'm interested to see what this team looks like in spring training, not just what kind of lockers we'll have, where guys will be, and if we'll see any names added. But I'm just interested to see how Craig Albarnaz runs his first spring training and just how guys show up. What kind of mood they're in.
Yeah. I'll be in a good mood. I'm booked up.
Nice. I gotta book mine as well. It always feels like you're in the middle of December. You're like, season's so far away. And then you turn the calendar to January and it's like, oh my God, it's right around the corner.
Yeah. I wrote the Birdland Caravan on the refrigerator calendar because we updated it for January, and Meryl was like, what is that? Do you have to go somewhere for that? Do you have to do anything? I was like, kind of,
You're
maybe.
Like, I'm hopping on the bus with the team.
Yeah. We're going to Bolero.
Yeah.
me and Albie. We're going sitting in the front seat of the bus to go to Bolero.
Are they doing Top Golf this year?
I don't know. I like the format of like, I feel like we were
caravan?
not involved in as much things. You remember the first year? Were you doing it the first year when it was like, if you wanted to talk to anyone, you had to go to like.
Yes. I went all the way to York, Pennsylvania, or like.
I went to like, I think I went to like either Frederick or I drove very far west to be at an interview where like, or to be at an event where like Hyde and like Tim Cousins were like bowling or no, bartending at like a Green Turtle.
Yeah.
It might have been like the White Marsh Mall. It might have been actually the White Marsh Mall, but it was like, and I was specifically there for like, I was like, I need to like talk to Tim Cousins about something.
I think I was there too, because that was the one where Adley was bartending.
Right.
And he was hilarious. And I just remember Gunnar was there, and that was before Gunnar had debuted. I think he was still a prospect. And looking back at how young he looked and how young he was, it is crazy just how much maturity he has undergone over the last several years.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were the interesting times. And the fans that showed up back then are a lot of the fans that are still in our comments today, and obviously saw this team grow. And so I think they're just hoping to see this team get it over the top.
Yeah.
All right.
We just do an advertisement for the Birdland Caravan.
I guess we just did.
Oh my God. What a bunch of shills.
Yeah, that was terrible. At John Meoli is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. We have plenty more coverage for you at the aforementioned. It's the second time I've said aforementioned on this podcast. Thebanner.com. Saw a comment. If you're watching live on YouTube, X, and Facebook, one person said, I don't care about these people's personal lives. Well, then
me and Paul
just skip the first skip the first 6.5 minutes of
we
this
were
podcast.
Talking about some nonsense.
We were. It's literally December 30th. Like, there hasn't been a baseball game in 2 months, and there won't be one for 2 more months. So relax.
I'm gonna find that guy or girl.
But 1228 Vinny says, bro, literally watched the Fast and Furious movies. And I did realize we're halfway through the offseason. I haven't watched any of the Fast and Furious movies. There've been too much good stuff. I saw Marty Supreme last night.
I've heard about that movie.
Oh,
I understand
so good.
It's a movie.
You probably have to get a babysitter for the kids, because you definitely can't take your kids to this one.
Yeah.
It's excellent. I mean, Timothy, It's definitely a film bros movie. Like, it's meant for film bros like myself to watch Timothy Chalamet just get up there and cook. And he's awesome.
All right, cool.
All right. We'll get out of here. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back at some point next week. Enjoy the New Year's, everybody. Be safe. Have a good time. And